wonderful evening to everyone from Chennai. Well, on behalf of CGG, we would like to welcome you all for our grand finale of HR 2020 series. And it gives us immense pleasure to show our gratitude to our very own Anamika, our very own Arni ma'am. And we have a couple of birthday buddies in this bunch today. One, Mr. Ramesh, and other one, Mr. Prabhakaran. Birthday wishes to you guys. Over to you, Ramesh ji. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gayatri, for your warm wish, and I'm so proud. I'm so happy. I'm really excited in co-hosting this grand finale 2020 event because this has been a great play in the chapter of CCG, especially because before getting into the show, I would like to recall a few things about this journey so that it would be easy for us to connect what happened, what was the journey is all about, because we are almost touching our 2020 end, be it the calendar year 2020 or the format of 2020, right? I would like to start this. How did this 2020 concept arise? Because as far as I understand, in the the people's discussion in CCG, to make it lively, I will connect this with our family structure. Okay, I believe in the family structure. I personally believe HR plays the role like a mother. In a family, like how a mother who always think, who always work towards grooming their kids and supporting and pampering. That's how a mother plays a vital role in the in a family structure. Of course, being said, there is another part where at most of the times, though she wanted to be a dependent, but she at times that she would be a dependent part, and she couldn't raise, or she even wanted to raise some voice against the decision maker in the family, or she wanted to register some point, but something would stop her in the family structure. In that journey, most of the time we all know, in the world of a mother's family, she would never think about her future or interest at any part. She always thinks about supporting the family or grooming the kids. Connecting this traditional concept of family model, as like mother, as I said, we HR, we again, I would double quote, we as a HR put tireless of efforts in journey of the organization and also a journey of an employee, but mostly we fail to see the growth or development. We don't think about how to grow ourselves. We always think about how could we support the organization do better, how could we help our employee, how could we help our team member to grow better, but we don't think about our personal development. This was the provoking thought that we had in our mind as a CCG mentors group. So without any second thought, immediately we have decided to kickstart a format of 2020, which was a provoking thought. But the major important point I wanted to highlight is the thought was already this was even this culture or this thought was already started before the pandemic culture of webinar session has started, because these webinars started mostly in the pandemic, but we have started it before that, I think by January, right? That's the first thing. And second one, as I said, how do we learn is more important. As I said, learning is more important for every HR's life. So that should make our future ready. So without any second thought, we have learning from legendary experts will unlock our minds, and that will shape our future ready is what we thought. So we have a lot of professionals in the group, but still we need a lot of professional guidance and expertise from the legendary people like Harini ma'am. So we thought no other choice that ma'am was the first choice for ever, right? For everyone in the CCG, I hope everyone who know ma'am personally, she would be the first choice. And last but not least, this 2020 as an year is unprecedented, because there are a lot of things, right? I think everyone are aware. But this 2020 format predicted in a favorite format for the lot of HR aspirants, especially the members of CCG who love this format very much. And over the period of 1 year, we have traveled a lot and we have experienced a lot of journeys. And we have learned, every member in the CCG group learned, and there are a lot of takeaways as well. successfully we have tasted as a mother. We cooked a lot and we have 10 different varieties of food we have tasted, 11 different varieties. Today's food is something so special for people who love biryani, this is a biryani. People who love pulihora, this is pulihora. And people who love sweet, this is sweet. Because there is no agenda for today's meeting. Today's agenda is your agenda. It is audience agenda. So we wanted to dig into audience mind, and we wanted to see what they wanted to know more about it. So being that thought, we have got a number of questions. We have sectioned it based on the categories, and we are gonna see a lot of HR concept in detail. And as I said, I think in one of the group posts that we have seen that asking question is an art. We have seen there are a lot of awesome questions waiting for us. We are going to rock this show. Let's kickstart. Thank you so much for this opportunity. There are a lot of questions waiting. Let's see what are all the categories that we have. Could we see it in PPT, please? As I said, the questions, overall the questions, to make it simpler and to understand and make it easier, we have categorized into multiple, devised into multiple categories. Thank you. I'm enjoyed. I'm happy. And see, these are all the sections that we are going to see. The entire session of 2020 is today question and answer. This is again unique. I'm sure that no webinar has been this model. These are the topics we are going to talk about. General. There are a lot of questions in general which relates to HR industry. And there are questions related to HR, talent acquisition, talent management, training and development, learning and development, organization behavior, employee engagement, personal development, operations, and about our Anamikas and story as well. So every question is exciting and interesting. Let's get into the show without further delay. Thank you so much, Prakash and Gayatri. Let's get into it.
Well, ma'am, it's again the question from Mr. Muller, Ms. Muller, and he wanted to know, like, is it good to make decisions based on intuition?
Fantastic start. First of all, Ramesh, I'm hearing you for the first time, and I think this was a beautiful way to set the context. Because I'm mighty impressed with a couple of things about CCG and the format of 2020 itself. One is, yes, CCG was the only group which actually wished to do it in a webinar format before the world went webinar ways. Because the intent, what I was told is we wanted as many people to be benefited by this. That's an amazing, noble thought. So definitely, this is something noteworthy. Second thing is, I think the choice of topics, we did not do any cliched typical topic. We did every topic which is different and which is not typically taken by any organizer for webinars. So all the topics are absolutely standalone and amazing topics. And the third thing is the kind of interaction that I had. I must appreciate every single person. I used to actually say that it's 9 o'clock and we should log out because questions used to brim. So I've spoken in maybe 100 webinars during the lockdown, but this is the only one where I spoke less and everybody else had a lot to share. For me, it has been a learning. So today, if I'm actually going to give right answers, it is because of each one of you who has actually added to my learning, right? So let's go straight. So Mallar's question, is it good to make decisions based on intuition? Mallar, the answer is not a straight yes or no. If it is a quick decision you have to make, then go by intuition, because invariably the way your brain functions is it would have rationalized with a lot of data that you have seen. So intuition or gut feel is definitely something for making quick decisions. But if you have the luxury of time, then it's always good to validate your intuition with your intelligence, which means with your data. If you remember intuition or intelligence, when we spoke on that topic, I said intuition is fantastic, go by it. But luxury of time, definitely validate your intuition with your intelligence and data. Yeah. Okay. Short questions will get short answers.
Thank you, Harini. Thank you. Actually, no, because I generally have some intuition. Okay, while I was sleeping, so while I wake, so generally I have some intuitions. Okay, so I decided many things based upon my intuition. So I'm telling actually, so it's making it wonder, it is happening. That is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so that's what. So intuition, how does intuition happen? The way your brain functions is, your intuition is based on the data that is lying in your subconscious mind. That's what gives you that intuition. It doesn't come suddenly. So invariably, the feel of gut or intuition works very well. That's what the blink theory says. So definitely use it for making decisions. But when you have the luxury of time, it's always better to look at the data intelligence that you have and validate your intuition so that you have a safety mechanism. But go by
Right.
intuition, no doubt.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Harini.
And the next question, is there any hope for seeking a new job position in this pandemic? From Rohan.
Rohan, I'm so glad you made it to this. Definitely, there is hope for seeking new jobs. I don't think situation is any different. We always had a mismatch between capability that is available in the market and jobs that are available with employers. Finding an exact match has always had its challenges. The pandemic is not putting anybody in a different position. It's only that when you're seeking for a job now, look for what organizations are looking for and try to mold yourself into that kind of a role. I know a lot of organizations that have opened up their hiring. Like I always said, don't have a static, rigid resume. Mold your resume to the position to which you're applying. It is not unethical as long as you're stating the facts. If you're able to mold your resume in a way that it suits the position you're applying for, and between the time you apply and the time you're called for an interview, if you're able to develop some amount of knowledge in that area, there's a very, very strong hope that you will land jobs. But always it is better to be safe than sorry. So to take calculated risks. Don't just jump into looking for a job. Take a calculated risk. But definitely there is hope, and things are looking very, very hopeful now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
The
The next question would be from Divya, and that would be the biggest challenge for HR in today's world.
My opinion, Divya, the biggest challenge for HR in today's world is its own credibility. I think that's been my pet peeve in all these months. HR has lost its credibility because of our own stupidities, the things that we have done wrongly. And for us now to get that credibility back is our biggest challenge. So to win that lost seat at the table, to win it back is the biggest challenge. And how we'll do it, I think I'll be answering that in some of the other questions.
Okay, next question from Jayanti. How was HR, how has HRV have to survive in coming years?
Not only as HR, but I think generally when you're talking about survival, it's about making yourself and keeping yourself relevant to every change that is happening around you. If you become a dinosaur, you will die a dinosaur's death. If you develop the qualities of a cockroach, you will actually survive through everything. Cockroach, by research, is supposed to be one creature which can survive almost everything. It's very difficult, they say, to kill a cockroach. So it's about how you reinvent yourself, how do you recreate your purpose, how do you reinvent your role that you're playing is what is important for survival in coming years. If you're sticking to traditional methods of human resource management because that was what you studied in B school, obviously that's going to be a challenge because organizations are moving from traditional methods to modern methods, so you have to reinvent. So reinventing yourself and your role is the secret to survival.
All right.
The question from Jagdish Manjula, she works as a secretary, and that would be, what would be the role of HR in this pandemic?
A beautiful question. I'm actually picking a thread from what Ramesh said. The role of HR in this pandemic is the role of it's the matriarchal role is what I would say. If any of you has read my articles, which are published in this magazine called All Things Talent, one article talks about the love story, corporate love story of profit and purpose, right? So I have done so I know Gayatri has read that, and Gayatri, will be good to share it with the group also. So in that article, I've actually personified a lot of concepts as human forms. And I've said purpose, profit alone cannot survive on its own, and only when it meets purpose, it becomes a corporate love story which actually has a great future. But today, if you see during the pandemic, profit is at its deathbed, was really sick in organizations. But what was purpose doing? Purpose was that which was driving things around, creating hope everywhere, even though profit was sick and battling for life. So I think the role of HR in this pandemic has pretty much been that of purpose, Miss Purpose, and not that of Mr. Profit. So the role of HR has been to hold on, keep spreading the positivity with its people, doing the right things, sticking out your neck when you know something is wrong, even when it hurts. Okay, sticking out your neck, having the courage to do that, navigate through the daggers and the dangers in the workplace, and ensure that things are happening the right way in your organization, whether it is mass layoffs, or whether it is hiring freeze, or whether it is calling back of offers that you have made. All of this, HR's role was something to do it in the right way. There are things which you have to do, which management requires you to do, but how you do it, that's the role of HR. So I think HR plays the role of the matriarch in this pandemic.
Excellent. The next question from Pankaj Dubey: how organizations position themselves in this pandemic?
Pankaj, this is a very wide question. Organizations now are actually looking at emerging out of the pandemic, and they're all talking about rebooting the business, which is a very positive thought. If you look at it, the whole pandemic starting from March, it peaked up. Initially, organizations were in a state of disbelief. They did nothing. We waited for a couple of months to see how things are changing. We reached the position where organizations actually decided to take drastic actions. There were organizations which spoke about layoffs, which talked about downsizing. Somewhere they figured out that that is not going to really help them in the long run. And then came the idea of giving away premises that are on rent, etc., and looking at different cost-saving mechanisms other than only downsizing headcount. So organizations have actually taken very different approaches at different times, and they have also, leadership in organizations have also tried to do things which are right. And I must appreciate business leaders as well as HR leaders for able to sail through this storm, very, very carefully and peacefully. So now when we are all coming out of the pandemic, while we have sailed through the storm, we are actually going to dance in the rain together. So organizations are going to look at, they are positioning themselves as now opening up business, now looking better, hiring to restart, to resume. And a lot of focus now is on cost effectiveness and cost efficiency, and not on cost cutting. So I think it's a positive outlook we are all going to wake up to when it comes to 2021.
Excellent. And Madam, connecting to the same question, I have one add-on probably where everyone would be interested. How the HR as an organization can position themselves in this pandemic?
HR as an organization has to play the role of the leveler. Okay, so when management is going at an extreme of taking certain drastic calls, and employees are at an extreme of uncertainty, HR's role is to play that leveler, to downplay the uncertainty in people's minds, to downplay management's extreme decisions. So HR's role is that of a leveler, that of a bridge, more so than it was ever before. In the past also, HR's role was a bridge, but the bridge that HR was doing was more like a conveyor belt, just transmitting information from here to there and there to here. But I think now HR's role is more like an escalator. Okay, it's not static in one level. HR's role is going on, escalating, it's going up. When it is taking information to the management, it is coming down and it's going to the people. And it's creating those steps like an escalator. It's not flat like a conveyor belt. So that's my take on HR as an organization, is the leveler.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Well, it's from Satish Raja. How about the job opportunity after this COVID?
1 minute. Okay. After COVID, also the job opportunities are not going to be very different from the past. I think it is typically, which I had spoken in another occasion, and I'm also telling you right now, is the world has been like a sand clock. Okay. So sand clock is something where the particles of sand are constantly falling down from the top cup to the bottom cup. That's a sand clock or an hourglass, right? We have all been particles of sand in that sand clock. We were all going through change constantly and we were falling into the bottom cup. But because we are those tiny particles of sand, we did not realize it. Suddenly, time was up. All of us were down in the bottom cup. The pandemic came and turned the sand clock. That was a jolt we realized we felt in the last 8-9 months. Okay, the jolt happened and we suddenly realized that we have all gone upside down. The whole world has gone upside down because someone came and turned the sand clock. Now what's happening is the last 10 months, we didn't give up, right? We've all survived through it some way or the other. There have been job losses. There have been life losses. My heartfelt feelings to all those people who have gone through those very tough times. But we have all fought through it some way or the other. So we have now we have again started falling through the aperture between the top cup and the bottom cup. But what is different now is because we have experienced the jolt, we have realized that whoever is moving faster or adapting to the change faster in the sand clock is settling down faster. Others also have to keep on falling. There is no choice. It's inevitable. You have to move into the bottom cup. Okay. But all those who are adapting quickly and doing something different to move themselves quickly are settling down faster. So job opportunities after COVID, the scenarios are not going to change too much. Job opportunities are going to open up. Of course, they might come in with a lot of flexibility because people will demand more flexibility. There could be even flexibility in terms of locations where you can work from. So to me, it looks like organizations will gear up to understand how they should operate going forward. It will become a more people-centric kind of job opportunities will open up because no matter what you do, whether you're in sales, whether you're in HR, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in operations, production, whatever, I think a whole lot of the way things will function, organizations will function, will be people-centric, which means job opportunities will be better. Policies will be a lot more employee-friendly, people-friendly. So I think it's going to be better.
Wonderful, ma'am.
Next, I think this is done. Yeah. So this is from BP Rukia. There are two questions. What is shaping the world of HR? What are the levelers to lead business transformation?
Levers, yeah. What is shaping the world of HR is, if you ask me, HR now is focusing on a lot of subjects which are not the traditional HR subjects. That is, personnel management is now becoming a very, very small aspect of HR. HR is looking at supporting the business, becoming an advisor to the business, which we have always aspired for. And BP Rukia, I think being in HR, being in the HRBP role and being in strategic HR, I'm sure you would understand that what it means to be an advisor to the business. And therefore, I think what's shaping HR now is deeper understanding of analytics, not just the reporting analytics, but also the predictive analytics. I think one of the topics which I covered was speaking dashboards. I think speaking dashboards are like a lifeline for HR now. A lot of interest is getting generated and business decisions could be taken by what the HR dashboards really advise businesses for. Another aspect where HR is getting shaped is in psychological safety, building workplaces of psychological safety. None other than HR can do that, right? Because HR has the legitimate way to drive what has to be done correctly in the organization. Again, I'm taking a cue from what Ramesh said. It is the mother in the family who has the legitimate way to even scold the father, right? So HR can actually tell the management that no, this is not correct. This is not how it should be. This is not how you provide a psychologically safe environment to our people. This is what you have to do so that people have no fear of consequence. I think that is what is so analytics and information savviness on the one hand, and behavioral and psychological safety on the other hand is shaping the world of HR. What are the levers to lead business transformation? I think the biggest lever to lead business transformation is trust. building trust and transparency in the organization through timely and accurate communication. I think business transformation can happen only when its people believe that they are responsible and accountable for the business. It's only when everybody starts becoming the CEO. So I think the biggest lever is trust and transparency, and of course that would lead to having self-managed employees, which means you're not waiting for delegation. You understand what your customer needs, and you are working in a psychological safe space in order to be able to deliver to the customer. So I think trust, transparency, and self-management are the levers for business transformation.
Thank you, ma'am.
While we are still here, Ramesh, Pankaj has a question. People analytics is the future of HR, he's asking. People analytics alone is not the future of HR, but it is definitely an extremely useful and a very pivotal subject for HR to become a trusted advisor to business leaders, because you can't advise business decisions purely on intuition. You have to have intelligence. So intelligence shown to the management can only be through your speaking dashboards, and therefore people analytics is very, very useful. Yeah, we can move on.
I was supposed to address, check with the Pankaj question with you, ma'am. Anyway,
Yeah, no problem. I'm watching the chat. Yes.
thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Anamika is watching the chat.
Obviously, ma'am, obviously. Well, again, it's a lengthy question from Mr. Vijay Kumar. Uh, as an HR, it's an integral part of any organization, and wherein which there are many decisions which has been made with the collaborations of HR within an organization at various levels. Could you just let us know how would be the different sectors that we can collaborate and achieve together as a single common force?
Okay. My very, very ardent belief and faith is that HR is sector agnostic or it is industry agnostic. So really speaking, HR is not about any particular industry. So because it's all about managing people, okay? And if HR was really industry specific, I'm sure we would have had subjects in MBA curriculum saying managing people in the BFSI sector as one subject. We would have had subjects saying managing HR in the pharma sector as a different subject. We don't. So obviously HR is never meant to be industry specific, which means definitely HR as a whole should collaborate across industries. And how we can do that is share best practices. Try to bring into your organization practices which have never been done in your industry. Experiment on those practices. And how do you do that? The best way is to network with HR folks of different industries, make a repository of what are the best practices that industries do, and try and experiment those which are not done in your industry. You could be a path breaker. The best way to do that is to build the HR fraternity, like groups like the CCG, work towards common objectives, discuss your challenges at the workplace when two HR people meet, what actually should happen is you should be able to discuss and come to solutions about whatever challenges you're going through in the workplace, or whatever path-breaking, innovative HR practice you want to bring in your workplace. So when HR people get together, it has to be a thought-provoking conversation. If that happens, then HR will become a single common force. But if we start hiding information and working in silos, I think we will never be able to work together.
Okay. Next question. Yeah. Next question from Uma. We would like to know the future of HR department in the light of the following constraints. If everything is outsourced and workforce is replaced by robots and AI commands the business processes, what is the role of EVP in the above scenario? The concept tend to be void as the workforce shrinks. Please validate this statement.
Okay. So first of all, I don't think everything can be replaced by robots and AI in the business. What can be really replaced are those repetitive aspects. So definitely with artificial intelligence getting enriched, obviously the bots will become smarter. And who's going to make the bots smarter? It's us. So we are the ones who are going to drive more and more data into the machine learning process, and we are going to make the bots smarter, which is very good. So what the bots are going to do is they are going to do what we were doing in the past. Okay, this is like how we have moved from a bullock cart to the aircraft today. Man actually rode the bullock cart, and today man even pilots an aircraft. The role of the human being has not disappeared anywhere. Yeah, you might say that what about automatic cars, right? In automatic cars, you might argue that the human being is not really required, but we are yet to reach that stage of efficiency there. And it's going to take a long time for things to happen without human beings, because there are a lot of unpredictable situations that happen. Even in an automatic car, it will work only in those places where everything is predictable and running smoothly. You cannot try to have an automatic car running on the streets of Chennai. It's just not possible. In Mumbai, it's definitely not possible. Like I always say, in Mumbai, if you have to drive, you have to be an intuitive driver. It's not enough if you know the traffic rules. You have to be able to sense who will come and cut on the wrong side. Okay. So an automatic car cannot sense all that, and accidents will happen. Similarly, the role of HR is whatever is automatic and can be done might be done by bots, and by us building the artificial intelligence. And I think we should encourage that. We should try and build artificial intelligence so that the bots do a great job, but the credit of a bot doing a great job still would remain with us. In an event that we need to take a decision in a crisis situation, I think that it would stay with us. We as humans would have to do it. So I think we are not going to become redundant, but our role is going to become a lot more purposeful and purpose driven. What's the role of EVP in the above scenario is the employee value proposition is something which is extremely critical. Employee value proposition would play the role of the employer branding. Okay. So even if it's an organization that is thriving on bots, if HR's role is giving the value to humans as humans, itself could be a component of the EVP. So I don't think the EVP will ever get replaced. I don't think HR will ever get replaced.
Thank you for confirming our places. Move on to the next question.
Broad view of the role of HR in 2020, vision 2020 plus forward step. The role of HR is definitely, like I answered previously, there are two things to keep in mind. One is analytics, be very strong on your data crunching. That's your intelligence. And the second thing is be very strong on intuition, which will happen only when you play the role of a behavioral scientist. Everybody can become a behavioral scientist. You don't need to have qualifications for it. Definitely qualifications will shape you up. But for being a behavioral scientist, all that you need to do is observe and empathize. So I think the role of HR is going to be twofold. One is be a very strong advisor to the management by keeping your data analytics strong, keeping your speaking dashboards speaking and always alive. And the second thing is by playing that role of the psychological person who creates psychological safety in the organization. So these are two very contrasting roles for HR, but a combination of this is going to be great. And that is what is, I mean, anybody who's able to master both of this will be a step forward going forward in HR.
Okay. The next question from Ashok Kumar. What would be the strategies of HR post-COVID-19 scenario in manufacturing industries and IT industries?
This is going to be very interesting because IT industries have already, many of them have announced to continued work from home or working remotely. So HR strategy for IT industries would be, how do you make remote working or leading remote teams much more, much more effective? How do you measure productivity when you're working remotely? So that's going to be HR strategy typically for IT industries, and even hiring strategies could change because IT industries in the past used to have us when I was in IT industry, we actually had a very conscious strategy of hiring people from the vicinity. So we used to even go to campuses which are close by and all that because of working long hours, working extended hours from the office, working round the clock, it made sense. But now the hiring strategy is going to look very different for IT because they have committed to work remotely for most of the time. So they can hire from anywhere. So I think HR strategy there, when it comes to hiring from anywhere, you have to watch out for compliances. Because I have come across quite a few questions where people have said, can we let our employees work from another country? So there are a lot of statutory compliances around it. So HR strategy should be to understand compliances before you get into changing your hiring strategy for your organization, especially if you're in IT. When you're in manufacturing, infrastructure services industry, strategy of HR could be very different. You might have to work very consciously about hybrid working, which will have remote working plus working in the facility. And do not restrict yourself only to the HR aspect of it. Look beyond HR. Think about cost efficiency in whatever HR strategy you're bringing in. Focus a lot on return on investment when it comes to making strategic HR decisions, especially if you're in manufacturing, because of the hybrid working would have its own challenges.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Again, Ramesh ji, it's your turn.
It's a big question. I think it's better you read out.
Okay.
I have mentioned my disclaimer in the top. So
No problem.
Please,
No
please.
problem.
So don't exhaust, please, or to audience as well.
No problem. No problem.
In my point of view, HRD and Labor Ministry are very careful about the employee job security in the organizations.
Yes.
Hence, there are a lot of concern policies are created and not adopted by the organization. So my question is, because now I am sure that every HR will agree that there are a lot of talent were happening in. The major major problem is bringing them onboarded on time is a big challenge.
Correct.
But
correct.
here, why is that there is no legal system in place addressing the current talent war? That is, there is no law that can help control the counter offers, which is a big hectic. That's the first question.
I would actually flip this question back to all of us. All of us, okay? Why should we wait for a law to come and tell us what we should do? I'm actually trying to connect a lot of the previous questions. So in one previous question, we said about networking between different industries, right? So when we as HR fraternity can think of doing the right thing and doing it rightly, we should ourselves be able to control this. Now, how does this counter offer, poaching, etc. happen is because our processes are weak and we do not actually create a proper EVP. Now, if my employee value proposition is so strong, okay, that my employee trusts my organization completely, he can never be poached. Because our employee value propositions are some things that we have written in the past and we have not bothered to rewrite it or revisit it, we are letting it go, and that's why counter offers are happening. Now, again, if one employee is leaving, okay, why is it that at that moment we are trying to retain him by making a counter offer? Let's take a step back. Can we keep a target for ourselves that I will not make any counter offers? If someone has decided to go, let him go. Okay. Now, how do you let him or her go? I'm not saying don't do anything and let people go. I'm saying, why is it that people leave? Because they're not valued. What is it that we can do to create value for people in the organization so that we improve the stickiness? So that's where the psychological aspect of an HR professional comes into place. That's where your predictive analytics comes into place. So get on to doing all these preventive measures before you start sticking the band-aid counter offers. So I don't think we should wait for the law. We should find out our ways to do it. But this is a brilliant question. There's lots we can talk. There's lots we can do. Hopefully, I'll find an opportunity to do that in the future.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And the second question is, what are the sensible tactics that an HR can help to onboard a candidate successfully?
I think onboarding is a process which severely needs to be relooked in most organizations because I've had that struggle myself. Once an offer is accepted, till the person comes on board, we kind of take the candidate for granted. I think a complete pre-joining engagement has to be done. So that's one of the most important aspects. And then when you do a pre-joining engagement periodically and effectively with a candidate, you will have minimal non-compliances when it comes to onboarding. For example, a lot of people tell me that on the day one, the employee does not bring all the required documents. Now that happens because the pre-joining engagement is not effective. When pre-joining engagement is effective, you have 10, 20 chances for you to talk to the candidate and start collecting information which you need so that the joining process becomes very smooth. Second thing is, pre-joining engagement actually starts building that trust and that bond. So my very simple answer to this question is relook your pre-joining engagement, that is between offer to joining, that entire period, how effectively you're engaging. It's not enough to just give a call. It's what are you achieving with each call? Are you getting that person a little closer to you? I tell you, it's a very simple romance. What happens between an engagement and marriage? And we know what happens between engagement and marriage. Sometimes things go wrong and people break off even before the marriage, which is good. So if a candidate does not join because you understood that there is a cultural misfit, it's good if the person does not join. Don't wait for the marriage to happen and then a divorce, right? Ensure that the courtship period is meaningful, and the courtship period should be realistic. Okay, you cannot afford to give very luxurious gifts during the courtship and after marriage say that I don't know who you are. That won't work. So ensure that the courtship between engagement and marriage is really meaningful and realistic. Then onboarding should be smooth.
Thank you so much, Mansur. Lovely answer. The third question, which is again more interesting, I'm sure everyone would accept. One hand organization, we are all transforming from the normal system to the technology world to meet the talent demands. The other hand, there are a lot of surveys coming in stating the talent gap or employability skill gap. Recent, I have mentioned two quotes that EY stated 92% and People Matter stated 72% skill gap. Here, the question from my end is, in the era of startups or the mid-sized growing organizations, which one to be prioritized, filling the existing skill gap or start hunting more for talents, addressing the immediate project needs? Again, I have mentioned where there are, succession planning is a myth, so people don't even look up as an option.
Yes.
Which one do we consider more? I have noted one definition change, which I feel now talent management appears to be like a right person. It's like people looking for plug and play. People don't even want someone who's trained, right? Like an expected cost. The expected cost either from the company side or the candidate side. It's very hard to balance most of the time. So how to solve?
I would actually put all this under the gamut of employee value proposition. I'm sure Uma must be very happy to listen to this. Okay. When in employee value proposition, when the organization is actually growing from a competitive stage to a differentiated stage, before you hit the peak, which is the purpose, what you're actually expected to build into your employee value proposition is a career progression. Okay. So if career progression or your career roadmap is a big piece in the puzzle of the employee value proposition, you may not find yourself struggling to hunt for talent for addressing immediate needs, because your people will be developed and they will remain in your in your pipeline, in your talent pipeline constantly. Your talent pipeline should not run dry. Okay. You, of course, your talent pipeline, you have to keep getting people from outside, keep in your pipeline also, but it's important that you look at your people internally first. So if succession planning is a myth, I think, and if we are all conscious about it, it is us who have to go and change it. I know succession planning is a myth, and it pains me when I see that happening in organizations. Succession planning is not only identifying people who are reporting to that person so that he will succeed when you die. Okay, that's not what it is. Succession planning is about understanding aspirations of employees in the organization and giving them a roadmap, a career roadmap, where their aspiration and the needs of the organization talent really match. You might have people doing completely different roles 5 years down the line. Like today I'm in HR, 5 years down the line, I want to become head of finance. And I'm telling you right now, you as my manager, I'm telling you right now, I want to be successor of your CFO 5 years down the line. I'm giving you 5 years to equip me for it. And that's a long time. That is succession planning. When you're able to marry the aspirational role of the employee with the futuristic needs of the organization, then your talent pipeline will never go dry. It's very simple to the way we are managing our water supply. If there is rainfall, rain is happening somewhere, catchment areas are somewhere else, and we are not able to get the two together, and therefore there is water scarcity. Same thing happens with talent also. There is talent in your own organization, but we don't look at them. The moment there is an open position, we go scrambling outside. We end up paying higher. In the process, here is someone who is aspiring to be there. We have blocked his growth path. He gets dissatisfied, he leaves. In the end, we have spent more. So we have become penny wise and pound foolish. So I think it's very important for us to change this fact that succession planning is a myth and not let our talent pipeline run dry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, ma'am. And the last question from my end is, how can a HR person working in mid-sized startup or any organization at the bottom level can influence their talent and ideology as a voice or techniques not heard? This is my personal question, ma'am. I really wanted to know.
Okay, if HR person working in mid-sized or startup can influence with their talent and as their voice or techniques are not heard. Okay, so one is I would say that don't give up. Okay, if your voice is not heard, if your ideologies are not heard, don't give up. It is just that you have to keep reinforcing. And how do you reinforce? If you keep raising your voice, people won't hear you. Okay, so raising your voice is a bad idea. What you have to do is build credibility by showing small results. Don't try to win big wars, but try to show small results. How do you show small results is create the credibility in the hearts of the people around in the organization. Management will come around. Management has got used to looking at HR as a union leader. People have got used to looking at HR as a class monitor appointed by the management. But we are neither. What we are is actually someone who is that escalator, who is busy going up and down, trying to connect everyone. And what we are forgetting to do is while we are connecting the ground floor and the first floor, we are forgetting to take the people along with us. So can we make ourselves more approachable to people, a lot more proactive, solve their problems even before they become their problems, and let the world speak about us to management? I think that is the best way. Instead of we telling about our own talent, let the people talk about it. And in a startups, it is doable. It's a little difficult to do in complex organizations, but in smaller organizations, you can definitely do that.
Okay. And madam, one more point here, because especially in the smaller organization, whatever we say that limits within the organization, we don't even have any platforms to showcase our talents outside. Right? Taking that as an example, in PCG we have 400 plus HR professionals. Everyone has unique talents, but if you look at the overall society point of view, mostly the top two, three name organizations, only people from their voices are heard. If they do any strategic change, people talk like anything. So, but we also have such unique thoughts. How do we showcase our talent? What is the forum or platform, do you think?
Start building your own brand. I did it 2 years ago. Nobody knew me. 2018 August, I think my first LinkedIn post was sometime around that time. Before that, nobody knew me. I've come a long way in 2 years. If someone like me can come a long way in 2 years, anyone can. I am not a superwoman. Anyone can do it. So build your own brand. That is when you're building your personal brand. Make sure of one thing: be consistent in your thought process. You cannot make contradictory statements. Okay, you will lose your credibility. If you're consistent in your thought process and your messaging is consistent, you become a very strong brand. Then it doesn't matter whether you're in which organization of brand or not, your own brand value will keep you afloat. So it's very, very important. And to my mind, I think any professional forum where you are visible and making the right statements at the right time, putting your mind to it and being consistent in your messaging, that will make your voice heard even if you're in a smaller company.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Look forward.
That's very classic.
And before we go on, Gayatri, Ramesh, there are two questions. Anand and even Pankaj had another question.
Yes,
Pankaj was asking is, what's the scope of emotional intelligence in 2021? Emotional intelligence, like I said, too much of emotional intelligence is bad. As long as we're able to balance it, emotional intelligence is great. In the sense, in 2021, more than emotional intelligence, I would say psychological safety is going to play a major role, because we are all emerging out of the situation. This is like coming out of a life-threatening illness from the hospital. The whole world is coming out of it. So what is important now is not someone who will, who's going to be emotionally intelligent with you, but what is important is, are we being taken care of when you're coming in? It's a recovery period. So what's important is creating psychological safety so that I can get up and start walking. So that's going to be more important in 2021, more than emotional intelligence. Anand had a question, Gayatri. Any specific advice for recruitment firm? I think recruitment firm, my very specific pointed advice to you guys would be very clear about job descriptions when your clients give you the job descriptions. Ask questions and seek clarity, not just about the role, but about the future of the role, so that you do justice to your candidates. Because tomorrow your candidate should not come back to you saying that they were not happy with the role that got offered. So take it as your accountability to seek clarity on the role and the future of the role when firms deploy you for for sourcing talent.
Thank you, ma'am. On to the next question.
How good are we on time? I'm just doing a time check.
We are
9:08.
Nine.
Okay. Okay.
Next question, Prakash.
Okay. Is multitasking a reality or myth? Multitasking does not exist, if you ask me. You can't multitask when you have to do 2 or more tasks which require your mindfulness. Without mindfulness, if you're doing something, it is not multitasking. You're just slipping on one task and doing something else. If, for example, if you are driving and listening to music, it's not multitasking, because listening to music does not require your mindfulness. It is music playing in your ear. That's all. But if you're driving, and you're also talking to somebody or arguing with somebody, then it is multitasking. And can you do it? You can't. So what you will be doing is, for a few minutes, you will be looking at the road. For a few minutes, you will be talking and fighting on the phone, right? Which is actually split tasking. So if you're mindful and doing both the tasks, it's very, very difficult. You can be mindful on only one. So I would say multitasking does not exist. It's more about split tasking.
Okay.
Opportunistic hiring has helped our business expand and grow. Is opportunistic hiring good or bad in the current pandemic? Opportunistic hiring, I'm not very sure if I've understood what you're saying, Archana. Maybe if Archana is there, she can clarify.
Yeah. Hi, Harry, ma'am. Good evening.
Yes. Good evening.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really enjoying your answers.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. So when I said opportunistic hiring, I meant we will not have a position, or we don't have a planned position in an organization. But when we have a candidate where we think this candidate can bring in a new line of business, so we hire that person.
Okay.
And for that person, we create a job role. Or
okay.
That's what I meant by opportunistic hiring.
So definitely in the no matter whether it is a pandemic or any other situation in the past, I think that's an amazing strategy. When you look at a candidate and you're able to see the future of the business developing or growing differently or exponentially, and making that hire happen, it's an amazing thing. But where it invariably goes wrong is, we see that goal, we keep that goal in mind when we get that person on board, but we forget to do all that we have to do to ensure that that person is able to take us to that goal. That is where the cup between the slip between the cup and the lip happens. Okay. So even now, it's a great thing if you're able to look at someone who can drive or who can steer the organization faster through the pandemic or as we emerge out of it. Fantastic. But also give that person the equipment and empower him or her to drive the business. If you don't, then it would be a bad hire. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. What is the number of hours an employee can be focused and completely productive? Are organizations following allocation of work based on the hours? Is there a thumb rule? Okay, research says that maximum productivity happens only for about 6 hours, right? But increasingly 8-hour jobs have become 9-hour jobs. We used to call it a 10 to 5 job in those days. If you look at any of the old serials and all that, they would talk about a 10 to 5 job. 10 to 5 job became a 9 to 6 job. A 9 to 6 job became an 8 to 6 job. An 8 to 6 job became a round the clock job. Okay, so what is happening is people are stretching for many, many hours. So obviously productivity would get impacted. Our organizations following work allocation based on this is organizations are allocating work. It is up to each one of us right now to ensure that we are keeping ourselves productive. And there is a very simple way to do that. Even if you have to work round the clock, practice what is called as work chunking if you can. Okay. Work chunking means do not sit at a stretch for 8 hours and slog it out because you're not going to be productive. Might as well take those quite quick breaks. So work for 2 hours, take a 20-minute break. Work for another 2 hours, take a 20-minute break. And a 20-minute break should be a 20-minute break, not a 30-minute break. Okay, you can't cheat yourself. So when you do work chunking, you can easily be productive for many more number of hours in the day because you're confusing your mind about the 6-hour myth. Right? So practice work chunking. That's the best way to be productive when you're working long hours. I work very easily 18 hours a day. Work itself, right? Housework is separate. Work itself is around 18 hours a day, and my productivity is pretty high because I do work chunking.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Next question.
How about talent retention using career ladder and succession planning? Definitely, Manikandan, this is a very, very important aspect of the employee value proposition. Organizations now have to think seriously about career ladder and succession planning. I wouldn't say only a career ladder, I would call it a career progression because ladder only goes upwards. But when I say progression, it could even be aspirational roles at peer level, cutting across functions. And the best way to retain talent is to help them achieve their aspirational roles in your own organization. Nobody would want to leave an organization which gives me the job that I love doing and also helps me to do it well, right? So that's important, and your succession planning in real sense would happen.
Thank you, ma'am. Prakash, next question. I think we couldn't see the next question slide here.
Even I'm facing the same issue.
I can see it. I can see it. What transformation has to be taken by HR regarding fixed term employment? Yeah, fixed term employment as companies are planning to move employees on fixed term employment in the future. Okay, so fixed term employment might become more prevalent just as much as a gig working could become prevalent because organizations may not be ready to do a long term forecasting, which is likely to be a scenario. So what HR needs to do is HR needs to ensure that you're very, very transparent on your processes, especially when you're communicating terms and conditions of your hiring to your fixed term employee. That's something. Second thing is be very, very watchful of the laws around fixed term employment. Look for any amendments that are happening. Look for different states in case they're having certain changes or amendments. Connect with people, stay updated on compliances because that's going to be very, very key. But otherwise, I think it's all about being transparent because I've seen situations where fixed term employees were not told that it is fixed term employment till they see the appointment letter on the day of joining, which is a very unethical and incorrect practice. Be very upfront. Tell the candidate at the time of selection itself whether you're a fixed term employee or you're a permanent employee. So your transparency starts there, or rather even a step before that. When you're advertising the role, when you're doing a job posting, there itself be transparent and clear about it. Do not focus only on closing the positions. What is important is you have to be able to keep that person, and that person should be able to keep you and your credibility in mind. So that's a transformation. Keep building your credibility there when it comes to hiring fixed term employees. Next question. Yes, my friend Arun's question.
Yeah, many HR organizations are religiously preparing training calendar and conducting T&D programs based on skill gap analysis and competency gap analysis on the basis of PMS. performance plan. How to justify the management regarding the huge amount of spent on T&D regarding the following. When there is obviously conflict with line manager regarding the taking credits for results yielded, on taking ownership for results on return on investments as a HR.
I think if you start with the balance scorecard as a concept and start building the balance scorecard for HR. I always take a couple of steps back and try to address a problem like this. If I have defined the purpose of the HR function, if I have defined the purpose of the learning and development function, which is my mission statement, why do I exist as a learning and development function or as an HR function? If I have outlined the vision, where do I wish to be as an HR function or as an L&D function? And if I have written down my value statement and I draw out my balance scorecard, how am I as a learning and development function going to influence the financial outcome of the business? How I as an L&D function is going to influence the customer perspective of the business? How the customer perceives us? How am I as an L&D function going to work on the improvement of the internal process efficiencies? And how am I as the L&D function going to work on how the employees see us as? Now, if you actually articulate your KRAs under these 4 buckets of the balance scorecard for your function, I think you will not come into a situation where there's a conflict between the line manager and HR for taking credits. Because in your balance scorecard, you have said that this spend is going to fetch you this kind of return on investment, which is directly going to impact the company's financials. You're already saying that and that is signed off. The problem is we straight away jump to tasks and we say that I am the one who is training people on communication. The line manager says, I am anyway reviewing every email that he's sending. So I'm the one who's training him on communication. That is where the conflict starts as to who takes the credit. But if we start with what is the purpose of this function and we make that, publicize that everywhere and let people also know why this function exists, not only for ordering tea and coffee and biscuits during training programs, but actually delivering effective outcomes. If we start looking at that as a practice related to the balance scorecard, I think we won't arrive at such a situation. But Arun, you're always welcome to connect with me one-on-one and we can have a conversation on this.
Thank you. Meanwhile, before going to the next question, there is another question.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun.
Yes.
Next question from Archana. How is an employee looking for change only for monetary benefits seen today?
Such employees will not have much value in the eyes of the employer. Okay. Anyone who is, first of all, I don't know if people are very open to, there are some people who have even told me that I'm looking for a change for more money. That might be a stated reason, but I think it is important for us to probe a little deeper and find out if that is the real reason. Many times that is not the real reason. That could be a real reason for a very temporary phase. And if it's really a temporary phase, is there something that you can do to take care of it? Find out those things. But definitely someone who is jumping jobs only for monetary benefits will not be seen as a great resource. Even if the organization wants some fixed term, short term employment, will not be seen. So credibility is about the value you give. If the credibility of the organization, if the employer value is about how you provide value to the employees, I think for the employee also it holds good. Organizations will respect only those individuals who are providing value to the organization and not someone who is there only for making money. So it's a two-way trust and value process.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, Archana, for asking the question.
Yes.
Right.
Why is the impact of office trainings very short-lived? Obviously, yes, it is very short-lived because we do training, we don't do development. Development is the aspect of it where there is a sustainable change. When someone is developed, you can't reverse the development. So because we are doing training, the impact is less. We have to focus on development. When you're saying development, it means you have to focus on what is the outcome you want to achieve. Do you want to teach a skill or do you want to change a behavior? If you want to change a behavior, it requires a lot more focus. A classroom session will not change a behavior. You would require an intervention. we assume everything will work with a classroom session. Teaching a skill, which is cognitive learning, that can be done through a classroom session. But teaching a behavior or changing a behavior or a mindset change is not a cognitive learning. It is something which requires constant reinforcement. That's called reinforcement learning. How do you teach a dog to obey your commands? You let it do, you throw a stick, the dog picks it, you give it a reward, right? So you have to keep reinforcing that behavior so that that behavior becomes sustainable. And then you will see the impact happening. So everything is not a classroom training. Skills can be taught in classroom, behaviors cannot be, behaviors have to be influenced. Do we have to charge employees to make them accountable for learning? No. You have to build accountability and make people ask for learning. I think it's the reverse. Building accountability is the treatment you have to give so that they ask for learning. You have to create what do you call an addiction for learning in employees by building accountability towards a business. Why will I be addicted to learning? Because I think I'm the CEO of the company, right? So build accountability first, learning will happen. Some insights on HR and design thinking. There are a few videos of mine, you can watch that. But HR is all about design thinking, or design thinking is the best way for HR to think. Stop thinking using the traditional mindset of saying, I know it all, here is a solution. HR folks, apply design thinking and say, I don't know, tell me more, and design your solutions. Do not impose your solutions. But Prabhakaran, we can also have a conversation on design thinking in HR because that's a big topic in itself.
Thank you. Yeah. The next question from Preeti. What are the challenges that we need to foresee as a HR inculcating a learning culture in the organization when there is so much of uncertainty due to pandemic? Also, what will be the effective ways of addressing them in 2021?
Uncertainty due to pandemic is there, yes. But if we keep on talking about uncertainty to our employees, we are making it worse. So when someone is terminally ill, or when someone is going through a very bad phase of illness and is struggling for life, what do you go and tell that person? You don't tell that person that, look, your life is very, you're going to be short-lived. What we try to do is we try to tell that person, enjoy this moment. And when someone who tries to take 2 steps in the hospital, we say, fantastic, you have walked 2 steps, right? That is what we need to tell our employees. Even if they do a little bit of learning, they show a little bit of interest in learning, celebrate that. Create learning platforms, create learning weeks, learning months, celebrate people's learning so that they see themselves spending their time meaningfully. And every bit of help that you do for people in helping them learn is going to help them sail through the pandemic smoothly. When they focus their attention on learning and development, they get a psychological feeling that they are preparing themselves for worse situations. And they will not think about the uncertainty due to the pandemic. The effective ways of addressing them is start designing your learning roadmap and talk about your learning roadmap. Learning and development has been a very, very misused or an abused function where people are only talking about training and ordering tea and coffee and biscuits during training programs. But I think it's time we move towards learning and development, and that would be an effective way. Start designing your learning roadmap, encourage people to join your journey in that learning roadmap, and that is the best way to address uncertainty. And all of this, believe me, can be done with hardly any cost.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Then we'll move to the next question. What is the scope of learning and growth in HR?
One moment. I saw Pankaj's question. Pankaj's question. How can a person articulate his vision and make happy to his family and colleagues? Articulating your vision is something that you should be proud of, Pankaj. Give it a shot without fear of consequence, without anybody feeling judgmental about you. Talk about your vision. You might be ridiculed, doesn't matter, but vision is simply where you wish to see yourself a few years down the line. Okay, so the best way is to talk about it, keep talking about it to everybody so that in your subconscious mind you will start working towards it, and just work towards it. That's all. Yes, let's come to Prakash's question.
Prakash's question. Yes. Question. What is the scope of learning and growth in HR, where he or she working in centralized, decentralized office? Which one should prefer for what's the stage of it?
I think there is learning and growth, whether the role is centralized or decentralized office. I don't think there is any dearth of learning and growth anywhere. It's about how you seek what you're learning. I think the mindset that is required is look for knowledge around you and just keep absorbing it. Do not compartmentalize yourself saying I am doing this role and this is what I'll be doing, because I would also link it to another aspect where I said that it is a great idea to customize your CV when you're applying for a new role. Believe me, if I had compartmentalized myself to my role or to my industry, I would not have scaled up so much in 10 years. Okay. So do not compartmentalize yourself to your job description. Don't get boxed by your job description. Unbox yourself, break all barriers. Do not assume whether you're centralized or decentralized office you are in. Go beyond your role. Uh, Volunteer to support other teams. Do not look for credit. Do not look for a monetary change. Look at it as a time and effort you're investing so that you grow. But believe me, when you leave that organization, your resume will be a lot stronger because you'll have lots of things to talk about which you did not do in which your current role did not expect you to do, but you did, which actually opens up, it'll become a gate opener for your next role. What one should prefer, I don't think there's anything that you should have a preference about. Whatever lands in your way, take it, but learn along the way. Do not leave a single chance of learning. Every day there should be a learning. Every day should be a better day than the previous day. Sounds philosophical, but it works.
Exactly, ma'am.
Next question.
Yes, if Nivya is here right away, she'll be happy about checking.
Nivya, are you there?
Nevertheless, like say, she wanted to know to explain
Hmm.
whether there are any metrics available to continuously monitor the growth of our employees in terms of their
Hmm.
knowledge, skills,
Hmm.
competencies, and
Hmm.
their attitude levels. And the
Hmm.
second question would be like, say, how about
Yeah, what is a perfect organization culture? Okay, I'll take the first question. How do you measure employees' development and competency, skills, etc.? Is when you're designing your learning roadmap, do not restrict to measuring only the feedback after you do your learning interventions or your training programs. Training programs are for skills and knowledge, and learning interventions or development interventions would be for behaviors and attitude. I'm replacing the word attitude by behaviors. Do not restrict yourself to measuring only the feedback. Was the facilitator good? Did he or she cover all the topics? That's the feedback that we do immediately after the session. But what I would encourage you to do is use a Kirkpatrick or a modified Kirkpatrick model to measure the effectiveness of the learning program or the development intervention. Effectiveness means, has this person achieved the level or outcome that was expected before you started? And is it sustainable? When you're able to measure that, you can actually see a development happening in the individual itself. And that should come out in your dashboards, because that's how you calculate your return on investment. What's a perfect organizational culture and what is the role of HR? There is no such thing called as a perfect organization culture. Every organization is unique in its culture, and it has to be unique because that is a fingerprint of the organization. Culture is actually a combination of values, beliefs, and behaviors. Obviously, you cannot expect any of this to be a perfect blend. But what is most important is your leadership team, is your HR team, which is actually the matriarchal role in the organization, are these key people in the organizations who influence others, are they walking the talk? Are they authentic? Are their are their thoughts, words, and actions matching? Now, that is what is important, and that is the role of HR to ensure that of yourself, your team, as well as the leadership, your business leaders, are you able to ensure that thoughts, words, and action are matching? Then you're creating a culture which is absolutely conducive for people to thrive. Yeah.
And again, Raji is here right away, and again,
Yeah.
she will be happy. Uh,
Raji, do you want to unmute and speak?
are you?
No. Okay, Gayatri, then you continue.
Never mind, ma'am. let's say she wanted to know whether the HR professionals from a rural background face many challenges when they take up a job in big cities
Hmm.
and corporate like communication other than language influences,
Hmm. Hmm.
adaptation, behavioral,
Hmm.
etc.
Hmm.
And what would be more success challenges and how to
Hmm.
overcome those challenges and get going successfully?
Um, Let me not discriminate that people from rural background face challenges. I think anybody and everybody faces challenges, especially when you're put into a situation that you're unfamiliar with. What is important is uh, look at what is the situation that you're going to fall into. So, in a way, I would say design your career. Look at where is it that you want to be 6 months down the line right now, so that you have 6 months in your hand to address the skill gaps. Look at a role model who's already there and see what is it that that person knows and you don't know. Look at those skill gaps and invest your 6 months in developing and filling those gaps. So 6 months down the line, when you are suddenly jumping into that adversity, you would already be ready. And that is true for anybody, not necessarily somebody from a rural background. What is the role of HR in change management? I think HR is the catalyst of change, because HR being the matriarch in the business and HR being the escalator, which actually takes people up and down. I think the role of HR in change management is to be very, very proactive and drive the change, influence the change, and ensure that the change is communicated well and not wait for things to happen automatically.
Perfect, ma'am. I suppose you had addressed the same earlier too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nevertheless, thank you so much. And again, can we have the next slide, please? Yes, again, our very own Deepak Shanmugam is here right away.
Yes.
And this question would be like, what will be our organization culture in the next 10 years for millennials and women professionals? And have you been overconfident about your job? And what is your view on women supporting women concept? And the next one would be, what would you think is the most significant strength of female leadership? And what are your success habits, ma'am?
Okay, I have never been overconfident about my job. I have been confident because I have no fear of consequence. If I have an idea, my ideas are usually well validated, so I'll just go ahead and experiment. And if they're validated, they should work. And if they don't work, it's okay. You can always do something, because if it's an unknown area, if you fail, it's still not bad, right? And in a known area, you won't fail. So I have never been overconfident. Women supporting women, I never looked at anything with a gender, wearing a gender lens. Women supporting women is fantastic, men supporting men is fantastic, and anyone supporting anyone is fantastic. But what is important is support. So supporting each other to grow is important, and we should strive to do that. What is most significant strength for female leadership? Again, I wouldn't wear a gender lens at all. What is significant for leadership is authenticity. Whether it is male or female, I think what's important is being authentic. uh, Female leaders should not seek for additional benefits because of using playing the gender card. Similarly, I think male leaders also should not try and overpower using their gender card. So I think the most significant strength of any leadership is being authentic. Be what you are, and that's it. My success habits, I think authenticity is one. I walk the talk always. When I commit to something, I ensure that I do it. And another of my success habits has been that I always get into an area which is unknown to me, and I tell myself that I will do it. I even announce to the world that I will do it, and I eventually end up doing it, and that's how I have actually grown.
Wonderful, ma'am. And just seven more slides. So we know that we are taking a great time of you, but
Yeah, I am okay, but as long as people on the call are fine, I'm okay.
it's our duty to go ahead and give this information.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Current trend is incorporates a mix of remote and in-person engagement. Yeah, this is what I spoke about, hybrid working, Lavanya. So this is going to be the most emerging trend. HR has to build capability to handle this mix. HR has to actually start learning to uh, empathize with people remotely as efficiently as you're doing with a person in front of you. It is difficult a little because it's automatic that someone who's in front of you gets immediate attention, but you'll have to find out ways and models in which you can engage with people remotely as well. So make your HR calendar and ensure that you give equal importance to hybrid workers as well as people who are in the office and people who are continuously working from home. So try to build newer models where HR works. And again, if you try to relook your policies, are the policies neutral to people working remotely and working in the office? As far as possible, keep these policies neutral. Do not keep any policies which are very rigid. Then you're actually preventing people to move from remote to in person. That would become a challenge. So think along those lines. Yeah, thanks, Raji. Yes.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Again, I'm missing out the slides.
Okay, how will HR know? This is from Sai Ganesh. How will HR know that work is satisfied? Sometimes stakeholders will say, but mostly no one will appreciate or certify. How do we know we have done a great job? Don't look for external validation, Sai Ganesh. I think it's very important for us to be happy that we achieved what we wanted to achieve. You start with your goal in mind. Just go ahead and do it to the best of your ability. Results will come. Definitely people will speak for you. Management may not give you an award, management may not give you a salary increase, but when you look around, people will come and say that this is the best HR manager I've ever seen. There can't be anything more rewarding than that. That is a kind of validation that will happen. That will happen eventually. I don't think we should work for validation. We should work for the outcome that we wish to give. It's always about giving back to our organization.
And that would be from Mr. Karnakaran again.
Yes.
Stages in the competencies for transformation from an individual to a trainer and a coach.
Very interesting question, Karnakaran. So from an individual to a trainer, I think that is the very first stage, when you're moving from being an individual contributor to a trainer. A trainer is someone who is absolutely, skilled in a particular skill, and you're so, you can repeat it 100 times and still not make a mistake. So being very, very thorough in a particular skill is what that makes you a trainer. And what makes you a coach is someone who is able to inculcate skills around that particular skill as well. So if you look at someone who teaches how to do bowling in cricket, that's a bowling trainer. And someone who's a cricket coach will also tell you what all can go wrong around, how the wind conditions can change how the ball goes. So a coach needs to know a little more around the subject than the trainer. A trainer would be focusing mostly on the skills. An individual is someone who is constantly practicing those skills to excel in it. Once you excel, you can become a trainer. And once you know about what are the pitfalls, what are the nuances around it, you can become a coach. Coach should be able to talk about the pros and cons.
Excellent.
Next
Wonderful,
question.
ma'am. And it would be from Gerald.
Gerald, yes.
And
how do you convince people to work from office? Give some pinpointers to attract employees to opt for work from office. First question is, do you really want people to work from office, and why? Look at roles which do not necessarily have to work from office and let them work from home. What you need to do is build trust in managers so that people are able to work from home and productivity is enhanced. Look at those measures for productivity. Insist on work from office only for those roles which necessarily require working from office. For example, if in a manufacturing plant, people in the production line cannot work from home. So there you don't have to insist at all. But anyone who is in finance and doing accounting maybe can work from home. Doesn't have to necessarily work from office. So don't get into the mode of even having to convince anybody. Look at those roles which can work from home and build flexibility around people and let them make the choice. Let them make the choice which days of the week they want to work from office, which days they want to work from home. Give the accountability to themselves. They will do it. The problem happens when we impose.
Yes.
that's wonderful, ma'am. And again, it's a combined question from Ms. Geeta, Archana, and Mr. Kannan.
Yes.
That would be, like, say, can process automation be a big secret to survival of business during economic slowdown? by reducing major clerical work. Will reduction of operational and admin costs be a good solution, including reducing rental space?
Yeah, automation definitely is going to be one of the secrets of survival, because automation reduces a lot of mundane clerical work, definitely, no doubt about it. Admin cost reduction is going to be another secret formula, because people have realized that cost effectiveness and efficiency is more important than cost cutting. So that's a paradigm shift in thinking, and it's a very positive paradigm shift. So it is definitely going to take precedence over cutting costs. So with work from anywhere happening, with a lot of tools that allow that, with a lot of process automation, I think that's going to result in a positive atmosphere.
Excellent.
Just two more, ma'am.
Yes.
Next question, Mr.
Is it
Kannan.
affordable to conduct trainings in the case of MNCs with global presence? Can trainings be conducted virtually with subject matter expert in the country? How effectively this can be conducted? Okay. When you're conducting trainings virtually, definitely it's a big advantage with the tools that we have right now. But what is important is, how do you design the training intervention? Use a concept called as instructional design. Do not convert the same classroom methodology to an online methodology. That will not work, which is what a lot of schools are suffering from. What the teacher used to teach in the class, the same techniques they're trying to use it online, and students are getting disengaged. That won't work. Use instructional design. If you want, we can talk more about instructional design later. But if you are able to design your learning modules for an online version, it will work very, very effectively. You can measure it effectiveness using the Kirkpatrick model. Uh, and for multinationals, I think this is a great opportunity. If you have capability in your country, in your location, and if you can become a subject matter expert and volunteer to do skill building for other countries, you can definitely become, I mean, HR can also become a profit center. You can become billable for your own organization by providing these training programs for other countries. So look at yourself, how you can convert HR to a profit center and not remain a cost center.
Excellent.
That's a great one. And as I know you personally a lot, we all wanted to know like how you are balancing family and work.
Well, I created my clone called Anamika. Anamika manages my work and I manage family.
That's an awesome answer.
That's awesome clarification, ma'am. Yes, come on. Our Marivar Prakash has to go and take it further coding.
Hi,
Prakash?
ma'am. Yeah, hi. It was a very wonderful journey with you. We are very happy and delighted to share our many thanks to you. It was a very nice learning experience. The way that it has been taken over from January 2020, it was like a very mixed topics, and that is topics were really need of our topics, and that made everyone to get participative in the webinar then and there, even after multiple reminders. And uh, I don't have really words to thank you. As I always say that you're humble from heart, and I'm really happy for having people like you always with the CCG, and almost now CCG and yourself has become a family that you almost know everyone people from CCG. And thank you so much for this wonderful journey along with us, ma'am. And of course, you'll be having in a gift. I thought that the gift will reach today, but of course, the gift haven't reached you. Probably you'll be having a gift. Once you receive the gift, let us know how the gift is there.
I already received.
Oh, that is another one gift which no one knows it.
Oh my God, no, so much of affection and the love and affection that you shower on me. There can't be anything greater than that. In fact, today after 5 o'clock, I was just waiting for 8 p.m. to get this started, because uh, this has been an extremely interesting journey for me, right from brainstorming on what topic and how do you twist the topic so that it becomes a little intriguing to people and makes people think, to write down to ensure that the session goes well. I think this has been an extremely wonderful journey, something that we did not imagine. And all credit goes to every single person in CCG here, and the kind of efforts that you've put in. So I have to be thankful to each one of you for this being, part of this amazing family. The pleasure is definitely mine.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your humble words. Thank you so much, Ramesh, and thank you so much, Gayatri, and thank you so much for all those participants who are giving us a continuous support for the
And
development.
Prakash, just 2 minutes of my time actually.
You
Today,
can take it.
actually, madam, today I felt as if I'm seeing somebody, a batsman, hitting all balls, all sides, a spinner, yeah, a fast bowler, a medium pace. Okay, it's all over the ground. Everything it's going like. I could enjoy every moment. What ball you hit, put, I'll be hitting sixes like that. It was session was really interesting and it was
Thank
thrilling
you so
also.
much.
And
Thank you
how
so
you are going to
much.
handle each question was that was the real thing actually. How you are going to handle this question, how you are going to, like that was our curiosity. But actually, every ball went for a six. And
My
double
my energy comes from every single spectator in the stadium. So it's that combined energy. So each one of you makes that difference to me, and that's where it comes from. In fact, I didn't even prepare. I don't, because it doesn't work for me. The sheer energy. I mean, 20 odd people still sitting here is something.
That's the reason you have become a coach actually. I hope because you know all the nuances of the cricket. I mean the whole the session, how it is going to be, how the change, the ball, everything, the pitch conditions, everything is in your favor. When everything is in favor, then you are the master of the game. So today we learned a lot. Thank you.
And this is home ground for me, so it should not be difficult.
But we were also trying our level best to get at least one delivery. Will make a mistake.
So many bowlers today bowled and no one got the wicket.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, Gayatri doesn't know what is the gift that I sent to you. Probably he'll be getting it.
Okay.
So once you missed it, let us know.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Harini ma'am.
thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you very much, ma'am. Feel
my
highly
pleasure.
obliged.
Deepak, whoever want to come in video, you can.
Exchanges, yeah. For all these exchanges, I feel very obliged and thankful to you.
Thank
And,
you.
your positivism is actually very contagious. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Have a great time.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Prakash, is there a
Thank you
clause
so much.
statement,
If
Prakash?
anyone want to-
Whoever wants to come on video, should we be
Yeah,
there at
whoever want
Kailash now? Kailash, sir?
whoever wears red shirt,
If
ready
you
to go
get
for
the
Kailasa.
if you get the visa, you can go to Canada, but you may not get it because only 20 people per day.
Yeah, that's precisely what I was trying to understand. I have not got visa. So can I put on my video is what my question was.
Yeah, you can turn on the video. Whoever want to turn on the video can turn on the video.
That's okay. Thank
I
you.
always, I'm always.
Yeah, Prakash.
Can we, guys, can we get closing comments or?
Any other question from the participants? I think it's already 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all questions are done.
So waiting for Archana, and if it is Malar, and anybody wants to turn on the video.
Prakash.
Yes.
It's awesome. At 10 o'clock in the night, people are really courageous to turn on the video.
So at least by this video, we could able to see them. Otherwise, it's really impossible because catching Archana, Malar, and anybody is always a
And for me, it is making a big difference because so many people around the country are becoming friends and familiar because of just the video. It's awesome.
Exactly. I
Yes.
suppose Subhash has raised his hand.
Yes.
Like to have a word, Subhash?
Yeah, Subhash, you can unmute and you can ask your question. Or if you want to say something, you can.
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Subhash.
Hi, ma'am. Subhash here from Chennai. I'm an HR working in Pacific International Lines. It is a MNC, Singapore shipping company. Hi, team. Ramesh, Gayatri, ma'am, from the CCG group. Actually, in fact, it's my first session with you, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
I did not even expect, you would come out with the so much of live examples during the 1 hour, 1.5 hours of time, because earlier 30 hours it was about Kailash, I think. Um, uh, uh, so really, it's been a excellent session, thoughtful, mind blowing, in fact, thought provoking in way in your language. So as soon as you complete the session, I have sent you the invitation in LinkedIn.
Okay, sure.
I want to have
Sure.
more knowledge. I mean,
Sure.
cognitive
Sure.
sharing from your end also. It will be very useful for me, of course, for everyone. I
Sure,
hope in
definitely.
future
And
we
you
expect lot
must
more session.
watch all the sure you must watch all the videos on the CCG YouTube channel. All the videos are there except one. I think the first one we didn't record, but most of it is there. Even otherwise, you can reach out to Prakash, Gayatri, anybody in CCG, and they'll help you watch all the earlier videos, because I did a lot of referencing to the previous talks, so you'll be able to
Okay.
connect with it if you watch them. Yeah,
Okay.
glad to
Okay.
have
So,
one new member.
yeah.
Yes.
So I think I need to have more, I mean, interaction with Gayatri and Ramesh, and of course you. I mean,
Always.
let's see,
Sure.
once the pandemic
Always.
is over, we all will have a get together. I think it's already
Yeah.
done before pandemic. We'll try for it. It would be an opportunity for me to
In
meet you all.
person. In person. I will make a trip to Chennai as soon as
Oh,
I
is it
can. I'm
so?
just waiting for the flight. Yes.
Okay. Oh, fine.
Hey,
Archana,
hi, Valar.
Hi,
yes.
Gayu.
Well, Archana has also raised her hand, ma'am.
Yeah.
Need to,
Yes.
I've posted a question probably during during
Oh,
our
okay, okay.
discussion. So if you
Yeah,
can,
Archana. Yeah, I'm just scrolling. I thought I missed it. Yes,
that's
how to keep the HR team motivated when the purpose of having HR is only to address EVP at competitive level. I've come across management insisting to bring in and follow practices that are being followed in industry and nothing more. I think HR has to actually, like I said, start with your own purpose. Why are you in the organization? It starts with that. If you're in the organization if your purpose in the organization is to address only what management is asking you to do, then stay with that purpose. Don't bother about creating that impact. But if the purpose of HR in the organization is to create an impact, figure out how you'll create the impact. Find your own way. Draw your own balance card. Balance scorecard is what I would say. Why I'm saying balance scorecard is you should be able to show
Alistair.
to the management what is it that you're doing. Yeah. But Archana, we can connect one-on-one on this, because I don't want to hold up everyone for a long time. But this is an interesting question. So this is my tip is draw your HR balance scorecard. Start with the purpose of HR, not just the 4 components of balance scorecard. Start with the purpose of HR. Then you will have your own answers.
Sure, I'd like to work with you on that now.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Thank you. I'll probably take your details, probably
Yeah.
your email from Prakash and get
Yes,
connected.
I'm
definitely.
ready to
Thank you.
share it.
Thank you.
Archana, you'll get it.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Definitely.
Prakash.
Yeah, thank you, Archana. Anything?
Prakash is like Mindal. I know you'll whatever said me. Thank you.
That is right.
thanks
Anybody
a lot
else?
for the wonderful, ma'am.
Malan wanted to say something.
No, ma'am, the session was very, very interesting actually. It covers almost all the topics in HR, and the queries, what they have asked is also interesting. The way you
Beautiful
answered,
questions. Beautiful
I
questions.
really
Yes.
admire a lot actually, ma'am. So generally, I'm following you in LinkedIn, and I'm really happy that first time I'm interacting with you in a video. So the session is really, really interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so
Is
much.
that all?
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. We'll have a close up right away. We don't have to
Yeah.
take much phone We really thank you so much for from our
Thanks.
daughter.
Thanks, everyone. We're going to
Thank you so much, ma'am.
miss
Thanks.
all this. Bye bye. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank
Good night
you
and
so
Happy
much.
New
Bye-bye.
Year.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Happy New
Thank
Year,
you.
everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy New
Take care.
Year.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye bye.
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 Bye.